Welcome everyone to another video in our series that explores sample records management configurations in mFiles with AutoRecords. As with all of our samples, the details of this configuration are available in the online documentation for AutoRecords. Working samples using these configurations are also available in the sample vault, which you can download from TeamIM and begin experimenting with today. All of our sample videos and documentation assume you're familiar with records management concepts, the mFiles user interface, and that you have a basic understanding of AutoRecords. In this session, we're going to see how to set up a configuration where we want to change the permissions of a document prior to the document becoming obsolete. In a real-world situation, there would likely be some other retention action after the document becomes obsolete. The purpose of this sample is to show how we can perform retention actions before or after a certain date. We'll walk through all the steps in this configuration as if nothing has been previously configured on the system. We'll start by creating a new policy object in mFiles. First, we need to give the policy a name. Policy name should be consistent, so when we're reviewing all of the policies in the system, the list is fairly well organized. It's worth considering whether we want the policy names to include a description of the retention or just the documents that are included. Generally, we recommend the policy name reflects the type of documents contained in the policy, since including the retention can get a bit unwieldy at this level. Using this example, we may want the name to be Procedures, since it will handle all procedure documents. The next thing we'll do is select the document class, or classes that belong to this policy. In this case, it's just the Procedure Document class. And with that, our policy is set up. Next, we get to the retention category. The retention category gets assigned to all documents that qualify for the policy and schedules an event or events to perform retention actions against those documents. In this case, there will be a single event to restrict access to the records managers 10 days before the document becomes obsolete. Looking closer at the retention category, we have a few bits of information to provide. Starting at the top, the ID is a number that you assign to uniquely identify the retention category. Many records management standards require that each retention category have a unique numeric ID. As you build out your file plan, you may want to use this ID to group retention categories together. Likewise, as you build out your file plan, you will likely find the retention categories can be reused by multiple policies. For example, in this case, there may be other policies which include documents other than procedures that require that we restrict access to the documents prior to them becoming obsolete. In those cases, we can reuse this same retention category. The retention category label is a free-form text field. As a best practice, this field should describe the events that will be scheduled by this retention category. Since we have a single event, the best practice is to make the retention category label match the event template name. Once the label has been set, the retention category name is automatically set as a combination of ID and label. The only other property we need to set for this example is to set the event template that will be used to schedule events for the procedure documents. That leads us to the next step of setting up the event template. The event group template is a configuration that controls how AutoRecords will treat documents that are part of this retention category. All event group templates follow a simple pattern of, after some triggering criteria has been met, wait some period of time, and then perform some action. For this event group template, we will use the obsolete date as our triggering criteria. Looking at the trigger, there are a few things that need some explanation. Notice that even though the obsolete date is a date property, we aren't using a date trigger. Date triggers are designed to be simple comparisons. When the current date is greater than the value of the date property, the trigger evaluates to true. In this case, we want to compare the obsolete date, but we want to do a comparison of 10 days before the obsolete date. To do more complex comparisons on dates, we use a property trigger as we did here. We specify the obsolete date as our property, and we are going to use a comparator of less than or equal to. For the trigger value, we're going to specify a keyword of @current_date plus period. This is a special value that will cause AutoRecords to do a comparison on the obsolete date using the current date plus the period we specify. There are also keywords of @current_date minus period and @current_date. Please see the documentation for more information on these. For this example, we want to know when we're 10 days away from the obsolete date, so we'll specify the period using a time unit of days and a value of 10. What that means is AutoRecords takes the current date, adds 10 days to it, and uses that to compare to the obsolete date. As the current date approaches the obsolete date, the trigger will evaluate to true when we're within 10 days of the obsolete date. The next property we set is the period we want to wait after our trigger is true before we perform our retention action. In this case, we want to perform the action right away, so our period will be days with a value of 0. Final thing we want to do is restrict access of the document to the records managers. We'll use a direct action that restricts access to RMs. This will change the permission of the file without invoking mfile's workflow actions to perform any additional custom processing. And with that, our event group template is configured. Our assumption here is that once the access is restricted, there are some other retention actions or business processes that deal with this record. With that, we've set up the 3 primary objects that AutoRecords uses. The policy was set up to ensure only procedure documents are included in this retention category. The retention category schedules a single event to restrict access to the documents. The event group template was configured to use a property trigger with @current_date plus period keyword, which evaluates the obsolete date against a day 10 days in the future from the current date based on a 10-day period. And finally, once the trigger is true, we configured it to wait a period of 0 days before performing a direct action to restrict access to the records managers. Once AutoRecords runs, we can see how this all gets linked together. mfiles will automatically create all the associations between the policy, the retention category, the event templates, which use our custom date trigger, and ultimately the associated documents. When we look at the document, we can see the records management properties, including the associated events property, which is empty. The event that was scheduled to restrict access has been executed based on the obsolete date. Looking at the permissions, we can see they have been changed to records managers only. Importantly, if there had been an additional event scheduled to delete the file 30 days after the obsolete date, that event would still be visible. Beyond looking at the document, AutoRecords creates a disposition log, which will show that the employee onboarding procedure was restricted to the records managers. Using the mfile's 360-degree view and the AutoRecords disposition log, it's easy to see how AutoRecords provides a records manager with full visibility into the retention on the system and allows us to confirm that this document was indeed processed and that access was restricted as expected. As we wrap up this video, we want to encourage you to check out our other sample configuration videos to learn how the power and flexibility of records management in mfiles can help your organization achieve its compliance and records management goals. For more information about records management in mfiles with AutoRecords, please contact mfiles or Team IM. Thank you for watching.